Hi, I'm Patrick Henry, and you're listening to A Shark's Perspective.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I'm Kenneth Kinney, but friends call me Shark. I am a keynote speaker, a strategist, a shark diver, host of this show, and your chief shark officer. Creating a great customer experience and building customer loyalty is hard when you really get into the weeds. It's not just about the packaging and what you try to tell customers what it is. It's what they feel, and there are so many moments that create that narrative. So how do you go about achieving that experience for your customers and helping them feel that connection? Especially in a crowded marketplace where you're trying to show people that the grass is greener on your side. And for better results, how do you go about connecting CX to loyalty? Patrick Henry is the president of Monarchchem, the makers of the eco-friendly herbicide Lonarch. He's a speaker, a former Nashville songwriter, and a humorist who was featured on the SiriusXM Radio Comedy Channels. And on this episode, we will discuss professional speaking, herbicides and organic lawn care, differentiation in the market, better CX in the extra inch method, how 1st and 6th Virginia governors affect SEO, Nashville songwriting, SiriusXM and some Google clusters, replacing canceled speeches with a new business, where Mardi Gras was invented, the pancake principle, Orange Beach sunsets after a few libations, monarch butterflies wrapping pallets, old country versus new and newish, the IHOP menu Margaritavilles, and a lot more. So let's tune into a country music, humoristic herbicidal president with a shark who occasionally says something funny on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Patrick, welcome to A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Well, thank you for having me, Kenneth. I'm the professional speaker and a business humorist. And 3 years ago, I started a company with my college roommate. And so I'm the president of Monarchchem. We manufacture an eco-friendly herbicide that's safe for the environment, safe for people, pets, and wildlife. And you'll notice that I called it herbicide, where most of the world calls it herbicide. But if you spend 5 minutes with an Alabama feed and seed store owner or South Carolina peach tree grower, it becomes herbicide real quick.
Absolutely. So let's talk about you then in SEO. Obviously, this show is going to help elevate you to the top in traffic and search traffic. But what's it like to compete as somebody who's out there as a personal brand with one of the, what's considered one of the founding fathers for a little name recognition? I mean, give me a keynote or give me death has got to be a little bit of a tough spot unless you're running for governor in Virginia.
Well, that's right. It's funny you mentioned that because that guy really messed up my search engine optimization. So I guess I got
nerve,
reputation, the nerve. So I tell people, I said, if you want to Google me, put humorist, speaker, or comedian afterwards, and you'll find me. But I was speaking early in my speaking career. I spoke in high schools exclusively. I loved speaking to young people, and spoken over 1,000 high schools, made hundreds of dollars. And so I was speaking at Patrick Henry High School in Roanoke, Virginia, and I was introduced to the students, and they started to giggle, as you imagine they would. But it was afterwards that a young lady walked up to me and she said, "Is your name really Patrick Henry?" And I thought, this is a student of history. I said, "Yes, my name really is Patrick Henry." She said, "Did your mama name you after the mall?" I said, "Go on to class."
No way.
Patrick
Well, the mall. Most kids today would probably think the founding fathers are the Jonas Brothers and Eminem and LL Cool J. I mean, they don't think about that. But so you worked as a Nashville songwriter.
I did. I was after college. Well, let me back up. During college, that's when I started playing music. I didn't grow up as a musician. I just wanted to be that guy sitting on a bar stool playing Jimmy Buffett songs. And so my sophomore year of college, I got rid of my television. I borrowed a guitar from a friend of mine in the fraternity, and I kept it for 2 years, and I learned every song I could. And I became that guy who played music. And when I graduated, I just couldn't imagine doing anything else but moving to Nashville to see if I could make it as an artist. And I tell you, had TikTok existed then, I would never have tried. I see so many amazing singers and songwriters on TikTok, but back then the barrier to entry was a lot greater, and it involved packing your car up and just heading up to Nashville, which is what I did. And so I got a job waiting tables and eventually started writing for a publishing company, and never really hit it in the entertainment business. I mean, although I played in bands all over the country, had a ball, but it wasn't until I left Nashville after I met my wife that SiriusXM Radio had started to become a thing. And so I did a comedy album of funny songs and stories that I'd put together. Every songwriter has a funny song, by the way. And so I'd kind of become known for the funny songs that I had written. And so I put together a comedy album and just sent it into SiriusXM Radio, and they absolutely ignored it. So I sent it in again the next month. They ignored it. And then I sent it in with a box of Goo Goo clusters. And for those of your listeners who aren't from the South, Goo Goo cluster is a kind of candy. And so with a note that's saying, I'm going to keep sending this thing until we both agree it belongs on SiriusXM Radio. And the guy thought that was funny, the programmer, and he put me on. And for years, I was a regular performer on the Blue Collar Comedy Channel and Laugh USA. And I loved it.
Well, you're happily married with 3 kids, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you weren't a successful Nashville songwriter. It's not about the quality. I mean, unless you're divorced, living in a trailer, I mean, it's all the jokes go. Yeah. But so when did you get into professional speaking?
So it all started for me at the Bluebird Cafe. I don't know if you've heard of the Bluebird Cafe. Yeah. It's a small songwriters joint in Nashville, and I play every month or two. And the way the Bluebird works, it's not about the artists that play there, although some really famous artists got their start there. But it's more about the songwriters, the people who write their songs. And so we would sit in a circle in the middle of the room. It's called a writer's round, and the crowd would gather around us. And so I'd play a song, but I'd also tell the story about how the song came to be. And so I like to tell people that I wrote good songs, but I told great stories. And so that's where I really learned how to blend story and song and start to build in laughter. And so it was after a performance one evening, a man approached me and he said that he was with the Tennessee Farm Bureau. I had no idea what that was. But he said they were having a convention the next month in Nashville, and he would love it if I came and performed. And I was so excited and honored that he would ask that I agreed, didn't talk money. In those days, I played for free. And so I put together about 45 minutes of songs and stories. And afterwards, he approached me and he said, "Patrick, everybody loved your speech." And I thought, speech? What's he talking about, speech? I'm not a speaker. I'm a songwriter. And then he handed me a check for $500. I said, "I'm glad you enjoyed that speech." And so, but what I realized, Shark, is, there's a place in the meetings industry. There's a place for entertainment. There's a place for humor. And I think that people are more willing and able to take in content after laughter. And so, Jeffrey Gitomer says the height of learning happens at the end of laughter. And so over the next number of years, I started to develop content around customer experience. And so even now, when I give speeches, I play my guitar, I tell funny stories, but it all leads towards that message of creating an emotional connection with your customers, with your clients, with your coworkers. And so I believe that, I think it was Maya Angelou said, there's power in the gathering. And I believe it, now more than ever after COVID, we realize how powerful it is when we get together in person. Zoom calls just don't cut it. There's power when people get together. And I believe when people get together, they might as well be laughing.
Agreed. So an obvious transition from singing and songwriting and then to speaking and then to What in the hell made you want to start up a organic lawn care business?
So I have learned more about EPA compliance and alpha hydroxy acids than I ever in my life thought I would. So it was 2020. I remember it was February 28th of 2020 that I had my last speech for the next 2 years. And so, I mean, you're a speaker, you know how it goes. I mean, literally within a
I
week.
also hated Zoom as much as possible.
Oh gosh. I mean, I love Zoom as far as sales meetings go, meeting
Or
with
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, or podcast. Absolutely. How easy is this? How easy is it for me to connect with my sales team and do a 15-minute update without having to fly somewhere? But it was 2020, and within a week and a half, I had probably a year and a half of work disappear off the calendar. And you got the same calls. We're having to cancel our meeting, and nothing made me laugh more than hearing them say, "Can we have our deposit back?" That's a hard no. See you in 2 years. But anyway, I gave a few deposits back. But my rule was if they didn't give all the deposits back, they didn't get mine. If all the speakers got their deposits back, but anyway, so here I was sitting in my office going, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And so it was about a month later, I get a call from my college roommate, and we didn't keep in touch a whole lot. We kind of lost touch some, but we had started talking, and he said, "Hey, I've got an idea that I want to include you in." So he's one of these serial entrepreneurs. He starts businesses, sells businesses. Both of my college roommates became multimillionaires. I had to go follow my dreams to Nashville, or I might have been one too. But so he just has an eye and a heart and a head for business. And so he had met a guy who is in his Mardi Gras group, club, whatever they call it, together. They all live in South Alabama. Now, a lot of people think that Mardi Gras was invented in New Orleans. It wasn't. It was Mobile. And so all along the Gulf Coast, Mardi Gras is huge. And so they have all kinds of social groups attached to it. So there's a guy in his Mardi Gras group who was a chemist. And he's in his 70s. He had retired, spent his career in the chemical business in Texas in concrete. He had invented all kinds of curing agents and different kinds of products that went along with concrete. And what he loved to do was create organic products that wouldn't harm the environment. Because, when you're building roads, I'll tell you what a lot of them do right now is, they clear the road, and before they lay the asphalt, they spray it with weed killers so nothing will come up through. Well, what a lot of them do or have done in the past is just spray diesel fuel, because diesel fuel will kill weeds, but it's also not incredibly legal to spray that. And so, but anyway, I digress. So Lon had retired and had approached Yusuf, my college roommate, and said, "Listen, I've got this product that I've been working on for about 6 years. It's an organic weed killer, and I've got it in 7 stores in Alabama. I need help making it bigger." So Yusuf called me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I think Roundup just got sued for $10 billion. I think this may be the perfect time to try to bring a natural product into the market, as long as it works." And so I got him to send me some samples, and sure enough, the product works. And so I spent the next 2 months doing nothing but studying EPA compliance, state registration protocols. I realized that our product was not a true organic because there's a chemical in there. Well, actually, we had to change chemicals because it didn't qualify for the 25B exemption. Now, that means we don't have to go through EPA approval because all of our ingredients have been deemed minimum risk for the environment. And so, but because of that, we had to have certain ingredients in our formula, or actually we couldn't have ingredients that weren't on a list. So I helped tweak the formula, and we started going to market. We started going to market with distributors. We've got an Amazon presence now. We're selling on tractorsupply.com. We're meeting with the box stores. And so it's been a heck of a journey. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup, and that's what's causing all the problems. And you'd be surprised, Kenneth, how political that conversation's gotten. I've had guys old men show up in my booth saying, I've been using this stuff for 30 years, ain't done a thing to me. And I always tell them the same thing. I'm not trying to change your mind, but don't you want an alternative for your customers who are looking for an alternative? Oh, give me 3 cases, but I mean, it's amazing how political the conversation's gotten. But a year ago, glyphosate, because all the factories in China where it's manufactured, all those factories are shut down, were shut down. They were allocating it. And so a lot of distributors couldn't get it. And so we're getting orders for truckloads of product. I mean, I had a truckload, like $150,000 truckload going out the door. And the guy called me and said, it does work, right? I was like, as far as you know. But so anyway, but now glyphosate's come back down. Actually, it's shot straight down to the bottom. And so we're having to kind of alter our strategies. What was the guy's name? He was the father of the management guru, Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker said every company needs to ask themselves a fundamental question, and that's, what business are you in? And so we had to ask ourselves, who's our customers? Is it the farmer? No, we decided it's not the farmer, although we have a lot of farmers who use our product, but farmers care about 2 things: cost per acre and does it work? And as long as glyphosate's cheaper, most farmers are going to go for the cheaper product. But we identified homeowners are our customers, municipalities, because a lot of municipalities are going towards more natural solutions. And so once we identified who our customers were, that began to shift which distributors we reached out to, which sales verticals we attacked. And so it really kind of helped us give us a North Star.
There's so much to unpack out of that. One, I was laughing earlier thinking about the whole, what I would lovingly refer to as the Redneck Riviera, which is Biloxi to Panama City. But if Mardi Gras had moved south, I can't imagine if we were making trips to Orange Beach and Pascagoula instead of New Orleans. But I'm kind of glad it settled in New Orleans for the most part.
Yeah.
But I remember when we met, it was one of the few times I've probably come up to someone and said, hey, I used to work at TruGreen. So with that background, it does a lot of what you're talking about resonates with me, and especially how many, at least at the time I was working there, and it's still that way, but especially millennials and even Gen Z now are so hyper-focused on the environment and the world we live in, and these kind of products really resonate with them. And it's in particular, that audience, it's so dialed in. But to that point, with the chemicals and everything, this becomes such an issue with trying to compete against the behemoths like a TruGreen, which owned well over a third of the market at the time I was even there.
Yeah.
But it's really tough. So how do you go about differentiating your product, even though it is a organic chemical, if you will, to really stand on its own? There's Chuck in a truck in every corner of the country that does some form of lawn care. But with your product, it's hard to really break through to an audience without knowing that audience well.
Well, it's about the way we market ourselves. I guess, for lack of a better phrase, we have negative marketing. We don't talk about how well our product kills weeds. That's an assumption. Any bottle you pull off the shelf, the assumption is it's going to kill weeds. Does it always? I mean, I'm not talking about our product, but not always, but the assumption is there. So we don't talk about how our product kills weeds. We talk about how our product won't kill your dog. We talk about how it won't harm your children. People love their kids, but they're nuts about their dogs. 78%, and this is why the younger generations are, and especially around metropolitan areas, Atlanta, landscapers around Atlanta are going nuts over our stuff because they have homeowners saying, do not spray. Well, they call it Roundup. Any glyphosate product, but it's like Coke, that represents all soft drinks, that they call everything Roundup. Do not spray Roundup around my yard. And so they're actively looking for an alternative. But 78% of Americans own a pet. Most own dogs, some own cats, and then there's those weird people who own fish. No, I'm kidding. but they but so that's kind of our value proposition is yeah, we kill weeds in a sustainable way, but we're safe for people, pets, wildlife, including fish. We did tests on fish, and because we want to be able to tell people we can spray it around shorelines. That's important to us. So anyway, that's kind of how we go against the competitors, is not talking about what it will do, but talking about what it won't do.
You weave some of these stories into what you talk about with customer experience, but give me a broad overview of what your position is on customer experience and how we go about improving it.
Yeah, for sure. So, so one of the things I talk about, and like when I deliver a speech, for instance, I mean, I'm always using a guitar. I mean, I keep one by my desk at all times. And so I talk about, my job as a musician is, in any musician, is to create an emotional connection with your audience, and my wife and daughter just walked out of the house to head to a Dixie Chicks concert. I took them a few weeks ago to Taylor Swift. I couldn't afford 3 tickets, so I sat in a hotel room while they went to the concert. But you can take artists like Taylor Swift and Garth Brooks, Taylor Swift, one of the biggest in the world. Garth Brooks was just as big, back in the day. And I look at them and say, were these guys, are they the best singers out there? And the answer is no. But I guess what their superpower is they create that emotional connection with an audience. I've never seen an artist connect with 14-year-old girls better than Taylor Swift does. And Garth Brooks, if you've ever seen him live, you could be in 60,000 people, you think he's singing to you. And I swear it's a superpower. And so, and I talk about 4 chords and 4 ways to build that emotional connection with your customers. And one of them is called the extra inch mentality. And I tell a story about how, when I was a kid cutting grass, and, back in the 80s, we didn't have big landscaping companies that nip, tuck, and lipo-suck your yards. You probably had a 12-year-old kid pushing a lawnmower around cutting grass. And so, long story short, without telling the whole story, my dad was inspecting one of the yards that I'd mowed. And he saw that I missed a little space. And he told me I need to go back and finish it. And I told him, ain't nobody going to see that from the street. And it became an argument. And finally, he got the mower, took it, and cut that grass. And when he got back to me, he said, have you been paid? And I said, yes, sir. He said, good, go give it back. And the lesson that he was trying to teach me, and I didn't realize it till 25 years later, was we've all heard the phrase, go the extra mile. But truly connecting with your customers, truly building that experience is about the extra inch. It's the small ways that we differentiate ourselves that I think truly creates our brand. We're judged by how we meet expectations, but we're known for how we exceed those expectations. And so as a speaker, there are 3 opportunities for us to exceed expectations: before the speech, during the speech, and after the speech. So, what I tell other speakers is, how are you connecting ahead of time? What kind of partner are you in the 6 months or 3 months leading up to the speech? Are you creating opportunities to connect with the audience ahead of time? Then obviously during our presentation, we need to be brilliant. I mean, if they're going to pay us, it better be worth it. And how are you differentiating yourself there? And then after the speech, I always recommend other speakers to the client to continue to try to serve their needs. And so, I guess for your listeners, there are 3 opportunities to exceed expectations for your customers. Before their customers, how are you engaging in the community, in the in your advertising? One of my friends up here, we call him Chubb. He's a DJ, and he's always, you always see him doing events. And let's see, this is when my kids were in elementary school. During testing, let me back up. So they always have student volunteers who stand in the line opening doors for kids to get out. Well, during testing, they go in so the dads would volunteer. And so they're going into their big testing. And so I'm out there volunteering, opening up doors, we're all firing the kids up for the test. And Chubb is got his DJ booth set up in the line, and he's getting people fired up. But also his trailer is right at the front of that line,
Right.
with his name, DJ Chubb on it. And so I'm 100% convinced he's not doing it for the advertising, but he's connecting. And that's how, when people are having parties for their kids or whatever, who do they think of? The guy who is connecting with the community ahead of time. And so there's those three opportunities to connect with our customers. Obviously, the job we do, our expertise is crucial. I mean, if we don't do the job, we're going to lose the customers, and then, opportunities afterwards.
How do you do that with your own company now? Because so many of us do that on stages talking about it. And I think you're one of the few people I know that didn't just curl up in the fetal position and cry for a few years when COVID hit. But you did. Oh, I did too. We all did.
Just a few weeks.
It was a few. Well, but you went and actually started a company and with a group, and very few people that we know, very few, actually went out and did something in the business world like that and started a company. But now that you're also a practitioner with your own company, how do you sort of think through? And it's not a chance to necessarily sell the great experience we love with Monarchchem, but you know what I mean? I'm sort of curious what you've learned.
I understand what you're asking.
In that journey.
And this was a great way for me to, to kind of put into practice what I've been talking about, and so, first of all, what really shook me out of my core was the first time I did a virtual presentation. There's 500 people on the other side of the screen, and I'm trying to be funny to a blank screen. It was absolutely gut wrenching.
Yeah.
But so, the extra inch mentality, and this is something we talked about, was how are we going to do it differently? We don't want to just be a weed killer. There's a ton of weed killers. We want to stand out in the marketplace. And so you mentioned Orange Beach, Alabama. My partner has a place in Orange Beach, Alabama. And if you look at our label, it's the exact color palette of the Orange Beach, Alabama sunset after 3 bourbons. And so a little bit blurry on the edges, but everything on the label is intentional, from the color palette to the monarch butterfly, which represents a healthy ecosystem, to the crown. I mean, and this is not so much me. This is more Yusuf. He's that's the way he thinks, but everything has purpose. One thing that we do as far as exceeding expectations or going the extra inch in our trade shows, and we don't do it for all trade shows, but like for the real big ones, like we were in Las Vegas last year for a trade show. We brought up these cigar rollers from Miami. His father, son, they have a company that they do cigars. I don't smoke cigars, but it was Las Vegas. And so we put them in the booth. The old man's rolling cigars. The son's out there educating people. We're giving away cigars that have the Lonarch band around it. And vendors are coming up to us going, we've never seen this before. We got 50 people gathered around our booth getting cigars. I'm talking to their wives, selling them weed killer. And so we also, this is a small thing we do. We wrap our pallets in orange shrink wrap. That's part of our color palette, that orange. And that doesn't seem like much until you go into a warehouse and everything looks the same except for that orange palette that just is popping on the floor. It's a psychological connection, but we wanted to stand out. Our warehouse guys, now we don't have many of them now. I had to get rid of one of them, but we take them to trade shows. Now, there's a couple of reasons that I like these guys to go to trade shows. One, I don't like lifting heavy stuff anymore, but mainly I want them to see the results of their efforts in the marketplace. I want them to think of their job more than just putting juice in bottles, packing boxes. I want them to interact with the customers. It turns out some of them are great salesmen. even though I had to buy one of them shoes because all he owns is work boots. But it's also a way to reward them with a trip to Orlando or Las Vegas or places that they've never been before. And so, I mean, those are small ways that we, and there's more that I want to do, but honestly, sales have to pick up. It's hard you're making decisions that cost $50,000 or whatever. It may not be a big deal 6 months from now, but it is now because we're self-funding this whole thing.
Sure. Well, so we had talked earlier about a possible conference we may be doing together. So when you get to that point, I definitely want you to learn the theme to Jaws on the guitar. I've never heard it played on an acoustic guitar, but that would be a good intro for me. So Patrick, I ask everybody who appears on this show, and if you spend any time as you have down in LA, Lower Alabama, or the rest of Riviera, what's your favorite kind of shark and why?
Favorite kind of shark? Little bitty ones.
Well, Patrick, it's a special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Okay, let's go for it.
All right. Number 1, you got 3 choices here. New country music like Luke Bryan and Chris Stapleton. I'll say medium-ish new like Garth Brooks and Tim McGraw, or old country like Johnny Cash and Hank Williams.
Okay, so if I was going to play it cool, I'd say old country.
Yeah.
But
well, there's no beating Johnny Cash.
Yeah, I mean, I love those guys, obviously, but honestly, I love 90s country. And you mentioned Luke Bryan and Chris Stapleton, 2 very different artists. Very
different, yeah. At least I didn't say Taylor, which sadly enough, people don't even remember that she started in country.
That's right. But I remember Chris Stapleton when he didn't have a beard and he was a demo singer. But I love 90s country. I mean, I love the 80s and 90s, the George Straits, the Garth Brooks, Alan Jack, Clint Black. I mean, that's just what I cut my teeth on.
And Tim McGraw is still trying to look like he was when he was 20 in his skinny, bedazzled jeans.
Hey, listen, brother, that guy does CrossFit every day. I would kill for those abs.
Yeah, no kidding.
I do everything but diet.
Yeah. Well, speaking of diets, you wrote The Pancake Principle.
Yep.
One of our greatest 5-star restaurants in the world is obviously IHOP. So if you were going there, taking the family for a little breakfast, then would you pick the chocolate chip pancakes or the strawberry banana pancakes?
I prefer the strawberry banana pancakes. I believe chocolate and breakfast ought to be separated.
All right. We're going to talk about weeds. I have the prettiest weeds on my block.
Yeah.
Which I wear with a lot of pride, but which is better for an organic eco product to kill? Obviously, Monarchchem works with both of them, but which one do you think works better with dandelions or crabgrass?
Dandelions. Crabgrass is tough.
Crabgrass is like a cockroach. You cannot get rid of it unless my lawn care company burns your lawn. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too in the weeds, no pun intended, but that crabgrass, I mean, the way those roots go, I mean, you gotta really work it.
Well, you talked about Jimmy Buffett songs.
Oh.
So I want to ask you, because you're close enough to both of these, I'm gonna do a little bit of a pivot. Would you rather go spend a week vacation at the Margaritaville in Nashville or the one in Pigeon Forge?
Well, gosh, Nashville is becoming more and more like Pigeon Forge every day. I mean, it's not the same Nashville that
No, it's more like Atlanta with the traffic.
Yeah.
And less freeways.
I don't know. I mean, Pigeon Forge I'd have to say Nashville, obviously. I'll tell you what, I'm sure you've been to Key West. I've never been to Key West. And that's actually the vacation I'm planning. My wife and I have been all over the world together, but I'm like, we got one of the greatest places, right here in our own country. And I just want to go do one of those tours where you eat your way down the coastline at restaurants.
Well, the day before I met you, I was down close to Miami, and the waters down there, and they've done a lot of stories this year. They're heating way up. I was diving in 91-degree water, and it was painful. So it's obviously a beautiful place to go. But anyway, number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today: biscuits or cornbread?
I'd have to say cornbread.
Okay.
I'm a son. I grew up in Alabama, so and the question, another question would be sweet cornbread or non-sweetened cornbread. It all depends on what you're eating it with.
Well, so Patrick, where can people find out more about you, about your speaking career, about Monarchchem, and more?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. My website, patrickhenryspeaker.com, is a good place to kind of see what I do. And obviously, if anybody has a meeting, they're looking for a speaker, they can contact me through that.
And if you're in the place where it's talking about the 1st or 6th governor of Virginia, you're in the wrong website.
Yeah, wrong one. He's doesn't do as good.
He's dead to me. So
he's dead to me. Right? And our, as far as the Monarchchem, it's monarchchem.com, MONARCHCHEM. But you can also look at get us on Amazon. We just reactivated our Amazon account. That was a strategic move to go what they call fulfilled by Amazon rather than drop shipping ourselves. And so we're finally back up and we're starting to push product now.
That's great. Patrick, thank you again for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you, Kenneth.
So there was my conversation with Patrick Henry, the president of Monarchchem, the makers of the eco-friendly herbicide Lonarch. He's a speaker, a former Nashville songwriter, and a humorist who was featured on the SiriusXM Radio Comedy Channels. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, differentiation doesn't mean simply repeating the label. Many times it's what it doesn't do, like in his case, an organic-based lawn care product that doesn't hurt pets. Don't always get caught up in the what you do versus what they do argument. Sometimes the value proposition and differentiation is simply something your customers care about that's going against what your product won't do. Second, love the point of building a connection with your customers, truly connecting like it's all the small ways that we differentiate. Love the mowing the lawn story from his childhood and the lesson from the extra inch method. It reminds us that we're known not for how we meet expectations, but for how we exceed those expectations at a minimum. Third, I love the point of the before, during, and after. I speak about this on stages as well all the time. It's one of my favorite topics. Take the time to define in your business, and here, take a piece of paper, draw 3 columns, and have a before, during, and after section. Now, to find out how you meet, exceed, or fall short of those expectations of your customers in that experience. We get lost in the customer journeys, but when you boil it down to all customers, it's in those 3 areas that you'll find many opportunities to improve, see where you fall short, find balance, and again, exceed their expectations. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time, and I'm so thankful to everyone who listens. Another thing I love about the ocean, no lawn care, no weeds, I'll never have to mow underwater. So let's dive deeper, and please join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.